So this is hands-on with our brand new mountain Driftstones. Driftstones are magical floating rocks. They're made of mostly of like limestone, standard rock, but then they have embedded magical Wyverstone in them, which absorbs energy, amplifies it, and in this case makes them float. We've got them in 3 sizes. We have a small, we have a medium, and we have a large. And they are all detachable from their bases. So this guy pops off, and they can each become scatter pieces. So if you don't want to have floating rocks, you can have scatter pieces. One of the fun things about floating rocks is it gives you Z-axis your combat. It helps make your combat more dynamic by having crazy platforming, having consequences for falling. Lets you do things that are really hard to do on graph paper. Plus, if you want to get things lively, you can also have them like move around. They could drifty Driftstones. We have ways to change their height and whatever. We'll talk about those options as well. These are each designed to hold up your minis. They can fit a 32 millimeter mini base. You got plenty of playable space on top. And they're designed to take little toppers. So this one, if you take the mountain jumpy stone, and that fits perfectly on top of this guy. Any of our teardrop inserts, particularly a stepped stone teardrop insert, fit nicely on this one, either this direction or that direction, or like such. So this can take a whole bunch of different toppers. And then this, we have a Wyverstone platform, which nestles really nicely on here. Besides looking really neat for any of your minis or your villain to monologue on or whatever, also is designed to fit this wyvern nest. So you can nestle the nest in there. So if the players want to go try and steal some eggs, they can have a hard time of it. This also takes Wyverstone spires if you want to have a floaty down thing. Similarly, you could take a medium Driftstone and invert it and put it on here if you want just sort of impassable chunks of floating Driftstone. You could do something like such. Something like this, or they could blow off. You can also stack, so these will have embedded metal underneath them, so they'll take magnets. So the magnet that'll be on the bottom of your jumpy stone will stick nicely there, and you can also then use them to suspend larger chunks like the huge hummock or whatnot. You can put on these and use them as bases to do some crazy multi-level building. So now where things get really exciting is we have the vertical rod ports. So all of these are going to have a 1/4 inch diameter vertical rod port in them, so they can take the included stands. But also we've got 3 different sizes of rods, right? 75 millimeters, 100 millimeters, and 125 millimeters. So it's basically 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches. So these rods let you pop these guys in and then use a variety of other pieces to support them. So you can actually use these pieces to support each other. So you could have a Driftstone above a Driftstone. So you don't have to use the bases, because sometimes the clear bases don't look as cool as other things. You can get a small one, a large one, and then vary the height. Might even go down short. When we connect it, looks like a stalagmite and stalactite column. Also, we have a variety of our pieces have these vertical rod ports baked into them. So this Wyverstone spire piece has a vertical rod port in it. Also, you could use this, you could invert this and use it as a platform to build something on as well. This platform, we're not sure if we can fit it in there. We're going to try and fit one in there like that so you can build it out. The rock cluster has a vertical rod port. Look at all these, we have these little plumes of, we've just drilled out these prototypes, so there's bits of resin dust exploding out every time we put the rod in. It's kind of lively. We have this stepped stump stepstone teardrop insert. It's going to have one. Do that, and you can do something like that. Oh, let's put it on this guy. You can do something like that in this. Have some cool multi-level combat. This end cap has one, which is fantastic. And these bigger ones are really good for the larger Driftstone platforms. So you can go up pretty high with these big platforms if you have a beefy base for it. And the biggest two are the crags. So we have the oblong crag and the stepped stump crag. Both have ports, so you can and so you can already see like a cool multi-level battle forming here. All right, so if the vertical ports aren't enough, we also have side ports, and this is where it gets really lively. So at the base level, the small Driftstone is going to have a horizontal port here and a horizontal port here. The medium is going to have one here in the front, here in the side, and here on this side. And the large one is going to have one here, here, and here. So these ports will be 3/16 inch square rods. We couldn't with our prototypes. We couldn't drill square holes easily, so we're using 1/8 inch round rods. But the final ones will be a little thicker and be square, and they're disguised in the sculpting. We've got sort of made little notches so that you can. It just looks like a natural notch in the stone. For the horizontal rods themselves, we have 3 different lengths. We have 25 millimeters, which is really short. That's for basically having things flush. 55 millimeters, it's for extending things out a little bit. And then 75 millimeters, so it's like 3 inches. That's if you want things to go out really far. So if you're using the 25 millimeter rod, you use it for making them attach flush. So we bury that in here halfway, and then into a piece like this halfway, and now you'll have a cool thing that's all connected. And these will be, because it's square, there won't be any turning from side to side. Just stop it, it'll stay flush. So you can pop it in there. And we have two different heights. So the lower port is down here, and the upper port is here, so you can vary the height. So if you wanted to put this one up, have it step up, you could do it like that. If you wanted it almost like a straight run, you could do it like that. We have our escarpments. Almost all of them have a horizontal round hole, so you can connect these out, suspend it off your escarpments. Especially good if you're doing like a big cliff build. All right, if you have a thing up here, you can put some suspended danger out there. So speaking of suspended danger, we also have our bridge has horizontal rod ports, so you could do one there, or one here, so you can have cool little like sidecar hanging off the bridge over the middle of nowhere. So that's just with the 25 millimeter. Now if we go out to one of the longer rods, we can look at the 55, and we can look at the 75 and see what that buys us. So using one of the longer rods, so this is the 55 millimeter rod, you can pop the Driftstone in there and have it feel like it's floating out over the abyss. Right? And then you can do a neat platforming thing where you have them like going across the river or whatever. You know, you have to do a cool fight on these, like out in the clouds or in the abyss or whatnot. So you can also do multiples. So if we have the long rod in here, you could have one really far out. With the square rods, we won't have any rotation like this, so everything should stay nice and flush. And also, we have our waterfall. Our plunge waterfall has a port, so you can pop that in there, so you can have a Driftstone floating out there. The edge of the falls, great place to cross. And a bunch of our escarpments, right? So you can have some cool stuff floating, dangerous floating cliff. And then lastly, because the driftstones have the ports, you can connect them to each other. So you can connect multiples to have like a cool orbit of driftstones. Whoa. And you can even make them spin if you want. So it's like a crazy moving like video game platforming thing. So lots of fun ways to connect these driftstones to each other and off of each other. And tons of just interesting dynamic combat possibilities using our various rod systems. And finally, we have the little cousin to driftstones. We have this little suspended perch. So this is basically like a tiny driftstone that has no Wyverstone on it. So using this suspended perch and the 25mm rod, you can do neat little flush overhang like that. So you can have your characters on this like terribly precarious little zone. Also works really nicely on your big, large crag. Boop. And this little guy nestles nicely. Works really nicely off the bridge. And works as a neat companion to these driftstones if you want to get really asymmetrical and get far out there. Boop. It's a neat little side platform on these. So that's just some of the many possibilities of our driftstone and our horizontal and vertical rod system.